Adventure Party for the 4th week of August 2022. This week, there's been an announcement, and the party are going to discuss it right now. Wait, hold up, guys, I'm not there yet. Whoa, guys.
Welcome to the party. I'm Savage Mick.
I'm Dave.
And I'm Owen.
And you are joining us, as you can probably tell from the header, you're joining us to discuss the recent news about, let me see, how many fingers do I have? We've got the new D&D edition announcement. Don't call them editions. We've got some insights into the pricing for D&D products going forward. We've playtest rules, and we've a whole lot more. That got me up to 4 fingers. Thumbs up on the intro. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing grand. Just was having a look at the playtest rules, and definitely some of the species are doing better than others.
Yeah, it's a tale of two houses. Either you're beloved of the makers of D&D, in which case you get extra spells and some pretty cool abilities, or you're a dwarf, in which case go suck a rock. Owen, you've had a chance to look at them?
He's laughing with joy.
Didn't I warn yous? I feel like I warned yous.
Yeah, well, look, this breaks down into 2 different things for this first slice of playtest. They've looked at character creation and said, we're adjusting the races, and we're adjusting where you get your mechanical ability bonuses from. And here's some backgrounds, but they're basically useless. And we'll discuss why in a moment. So, thoughts, Owen? You are our systems guy, first and foremost.
I am mostly going off fragments I've picked up because I refuse to sign into D&D Beyond. So I've been looking at bits and pieces over the what they put out. They're decoupled totally kind of stat mods from races, which is basically what they've done already in Tasha's. So it's much more about, like, your race is much more about primarily, I would say, special abilities, and the second iteration is aesthetics. So if you want your race to look like what you want, hence they've got a race of animal-faced people.
Yeah, the Tumblr kids arrived to D&D.
Yeah, because, well, angels are out, furries are in, man, and what can I tell you? So that's what they're going for. Now, this is always going to be a playtest, and anything that is anything that gets too much of a negative reaction from the community will get ixnayed. But I would say that most of this stuff is kind of reasonably uncontroversial. There are some oddities in here, though, I'll tell you. Like, just saying, for example, that you're not defined at all by your culture, that's fair enough. You can take that. But instead, it's mostly the gods made you this way with magic. And they're like...
Yeah, that's spread around pretty unevenly as well. Because if you're a dwarf or an elf, you're explicitly made by the gods and imbued with these powers. If you're an elf, you get 3 times as much backstory in these playtest rules, and a smattering of pretty cool powers, depending on which kind of elf you are. If you're a dwarf, you get 1 mildly useful utility, and dwarves sometimes call themselves different things, but they're all dwarves, basically. Go hump rocks, which I found amusing. And the elf thing appears to bring them to about the same level as the new golden children, the Ardlings, which are celestial derived. The Ardlings couldn't really get too much more than the elves, apparently.
Well, elves are popular.
Yeah. So, decoupling base attributes from race, fine. Actually, in many ways, I think it's actually made race even more important in terms of min-maxing, because now it's largely down to the traits, and some of the races just have better traits than others.
They're like, depending on your game, of course. I mean, there's a lot of really good movement, like Ardlings are really good movement stuff, and as do elves, but because D&D adventures don't really standard come with maps, and it's a lot of the time it's kind of, it's theatre of the mind, really. How fast you can move or in and around, that's going to vary based on the GM quite a lot.
Yeah, depends on your group. If you're battle map people, then there's some huge advantages to certain races. If not, then yeah, whatever.
I mean, like, no, you'd be able to argue an advantage in various situations, but like, what's your if your GM's are like, oh, theater of the mind, you're like, well, I can move 120 feet, and he's like, okay,
Like, I can straight off level 1 fly. Okay. I feel sorry for GMs at this point.
Was the coast discourage Eric Crocra from Adventures Guild play? Or am I misremembering?
of course they did.
Because they were that fly at level 1. So what's this crack with the Ardlings then?
I suspect the designers no longer run games, and therefore don't have to deal with players.
Ruling's not rules, man. The GM will handle it.
Look, so there's the Dragonborn get nerfed, surprisingly. I'm not familiar with the intricacies of it, but I believe their breath weapon just got worse.
Yes. It wasn't. You could use it basically as an attack. Like, you could sub it in for an attack. Now it's back to being an action. So it's basically worthless. Scales
a little bit with your level, but I can understand. So you got to remember, Dragonborn were brought in 4th Ed. I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but for the listeners, brought in 4th Ed, where a breath weapon, 15-foot cone breath weapon, was really useful because you had lots and lots of 1 hit point monsters. If you don't have that, and I don't think they've really accounted getting rid of the henchman minion kind of thing that was in 4th Ed, along with a lot of other good things in 4th Ed. Don't worry, this isn't rehashing Reagan. There's just some things they just turned their backs on. But Dragonborn weapon then became bad for a while, then they revised it so it was pretty good, but now it's back to being trash. So there's that.
There does seem to be a spate of articles lately about people pining for 4th edition, which is interesting because I just do not remember 4th edition being that wildly popular.
No, everyone hated it. It's a slog. It's awful. But it had some good ideas. I think the action point was good. I think the second one was good. I think the bloody condition was good. I think the 1 point hit monsters that allowed you to place buckets of minis on the table and then sweep them off again was, depending on your Ameritrash sensibilities, pretty f***ing good.
They're never going back to 4th Ed again. I cracked the door open for Paizo. Right, number 1. Number 2, it was a heavily tactical, map-based fighting game. 5th Ed is completely the opposite. It is as opposite as it can get, without actually, refusing to say maps shouldn't exist. The two, they're never going back. If you want 4th Ed, you should go play Pathfinder 2.
They kept legendary actions, didn't they? Which were brought in 4th Ed. Or am I smoking rope?
Yeah, they kept 1 or 2 things, but like the focus on map, the focus on basically everyone kind of having the same framework for powers between at wills, encounters, and dailies, the scaling accuracy, that's all gone, man.
There's things about it that weren't great. There's things about it I really don't want to go back to.
Fights took too long. Fights were good, they took too long. That's the main problem.
And I felt like they missed out, and there was no real synergy between some of the special abilities across characters. Right, let's go back to... Okay, so we've kind of looked at some of that. The background section is... I think it's low-key good for GMs, because if I need stats, I need quick stats for a noble or a peddler or a labourer, I'll apply that background, and I've got something I can use immediately. If I'm a player, the first section of the backgrounds is how to make your own with no rhyme nor reason. So all the other backgrounds are instantly, I don't need them anymore. I'll pick +2 +1 or +1 +1 +1. I get a feat, I get a language choice, I get 2 skill proficiencies, and I'm off to the races. That's fine. But it does mean that, like, in some ways, this might be a min-maxer's paradise. My race doesn't matter. My class and my attribute choices. Not to mention, I'm going to be making... I can very liberally decide what attribute my racial trait keys off. So I can match that up instantly to a wide variety of classes. And the simplified magic, which I like.
On one level for creativity, it's fine. But you can very quickly be the best fighter is this race with this background. You very, 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 very quickly. And there will be guides along these lines. And if you don't want your character to look like that, you can always be, I'm a half Ardling, half elf. But I just look like an elf, but I use the Ardling special abilities. Which is fine. But I like constraints in my character building because it means I make choices. And rather than just getting, I get to pick whatever I want. It's an unlimited buffet, which is fine, but it means that stuff's going to end up looking samey in a few years. This would be the best choice, the agreed best choice. Even if it's maybe not necessarily correct, it'll probably be the agreed best choice. You need to be very good at design to implement. You get absolute freedom of choice, but multiple options are equally good. In general, not. There's a couple of must-take options, just take them. And that's the likely outcome.
Which kind of feels familiar. Okay, Dave, you've had a brief chance to look at these playtest rules. Anything standing out for you?
The disconnect between a character's culture and what abilities they have seems a bit strange to me, because like an awful lot of expertise begins in childhood. I mean, just from a verisimilitude point of view, I agree that there's pretty much a buffet here of options, and I mean, the ability to pick whatever abilities you like for, divorced of race might help a little bit with picking. Oh, this race is the only race you should go with for this class, but there's also a pile of special abilities, so you're right back to that problem. Yeah, I'd say it'll shake out pretty quickly. Like, yeah, you're going to play a dwarf cleric or, well, whatever the equivalent is in this not edition.
Yeah, look, I mean, optimized play isn't really the only way to play, though we should pay attention to not producing broken characters that are fundamentally unfit for adventuring. But, I like the variety here. I want to play a bodybuilder elf. I can do that now, and I can explain it away. One of my parents was an orc and the other was an elf. Don't ask which one. Do you like my swole muscles and my pointy ears? And orcs are all grey now for some reason. I thought they had sort of a more varied hue in recent editions. I thought that was an odd one.
Well, their kind of standard was always grey.
Yeah, well, half orcs. I mean, half orc erasure is now complete. They're gone mechanically. There's no such thing as a half orc. It's orc or human.
Like all mixed race children, they are exactly identical to one half of the family and completely nothing like the other half.
I think that's definitely for the table's discretion. They just have to put something in the playtest rules. They might. Oh, here's the one that really stumped me. So we now, for almost I think the first time, you can choose in certain races. You can choose their size, as in their mechanically significant size of being either medium or small. The Ardlings get it. The humans get it. I think that's it. An Ardling can be between 2 and 3 feet tall, or 4 and 7 feet tall, as can humans. A dwarf can't.
Oh, that's weird.
What gives? I mean, I can see the representations of the side of things. There are, we in the real world, humans come in a variety of shapes and sizes. But apparently dwarves don't, and certain other people don't as well. But the new cool kids do.
So wait, the race that's called dwarf can't be shorter than humans.
Well, they can, but they can't be shorter than the shortest humans.
Oh, okay. Maybe they're just more standardized in size. Yeah, what that works.
Well, they're bog standard in almost every way because no one bothered to write any extra stuff for them. But the same is true of elves. Like elves, apparently there's no pygmy elves. There's no short people elves. What's the accepted term? There's no elves with dwarfism. Or something. I don't know. I don't want to get into a fantasy wheelchair debate, but I do note that one of your choices as a common language is Common Sign Language, which is an interesting idea.
Yeah, sign languages are handy in games, like silent, and also rather helpful for if somebody's deaf.
Very well, obviously. Although I wouldn't have called it a common language. Because there is a section for rare languages as well. But apparently there must be a higher proportion of the population are deaf in wherever this ends up being set. Probably failing.
I'm glad everyone agreed to speak the same sign language.
Oh, well, there's that as well, yeah. Well, look, we've got... that's fine. We've got common.
That was easy.
We have common, and what do we really want? Do we want to stand around sort of pretending not to understand each other, or do we want to get on with playing? Actually, here's the other wild one for me. All humans, very likely, based on these rules, come from Sigil, or at least originate from there, which means that almost all humans are filthy colonizers in almost every setting, which is an interesting wrinkle that we'll probably come back to some other time. Right, so that's the first half of the episode. I think they're generally fine. I think there's some clear new hotness stuff. I remember it being the same with Tieflings when they were first introduced. They got the cool new rules. I think the cool new rules are fine. Wobetide dealing with flying characters at level 1, but that's a GM's problem. There's the underwriting on some of the races is like, and I'm particularly pissed off about dwarves because I don't see any good reason not to write them as a bit more interesting. We've plenty of good examples of interesting different types of dwarves within D&D and elsewhere.
There are some great write-ups in dwarves.
Yeah, however, this is only half of the picture. These playtest rules come on the back of a much more seismic announcement. First of all, these rules are for something called, what will eventually I think be called, One D&D. And you might be thinking to yourself, is that One D&D 5.5 or is that One D&D 6th edition? And the answer is, get back in your merchandising box, you filthy peon. We're doing away with editions. We've fixed and perfected the game. Yeah, I know. I'm as surprised as you are. Like we've got Chris Perkins on record going, D&D's basically mechanically as sound as it needs to be. We're done with developing it. This is the D&D we're going to be using from now on, with some tweaks here and there. But this will be fully backwards compatible with everything you've bought before, and we're not changing anything. Buy our product. It's the One D&D announcement. Lots of stuff there.
Can I just say that I'm sure OD&D people are super, super stoked that the new acronym for the newest version of D&D is going to be OD&D. So when they advertise, I'm playing an OD&D game, people show up with their Ardlings, they are going to be so happy.
You'll use numerical 1 D&D, but yeah, there's going to be a wild period there. That's eventually will just be rendered down to D&D, and eventually we just drop one of the Ds or something.
I have seen jokes about OD&D getting people to mistakenly look up original D&D, like as in 0 edition. Right.
And if you're interested, dear listener, in the origins of D&D, do check out our Toma Gygax series, which I'm currently being dragged backwards through, screaming, by the Warlord, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. We're hoping to get his thoughts on this soon. Okay, so One D&D, they've announced that D&D is basically done. It's kind of one of those end of history announcements, which I think always age super well. So I've no faith in it. They've also said that they're building a virtual tabletop, that they're releasing book and digital bundles, and a few other things. There'll probably be some changes to subscription models as we go along. Any thoughts on this, folks? What have you found? What have you unearthed? What can't you believe? What are you looking forward to?
Like, I will say that I haven't been in love with the D&D Beyond model. I prefer owning my stuff, to be honest. And I don't regard a pay to access service as owning. So yeah, I'm not it's not going to affect me directly, but yeah, there does seem to be a big old push towards putting everything into the digital realm, owned and shaped by WotC.
Something of a walled garden.
Yeah, that's very much the goal here. Now, guys, let's take a look at this. And people are saying things like, "Oh, look, you'll own it you'll have access to it forever." All right. If you take a look at what's happening with HBO at the moment on foot with the Discovery merger with Warner Brothers, right? They have memory hold entire series, TV series, animated series, other ones they're gone. In addition to cancelling movies, in addition to basically just canon stuff, they've taken stuff that's already on their service and they have removed it. They've deleted every bit of promo material they have for it. They've deleted the tweets. The stuff is officially gone. You can't get it anymore because they're using it to first write off losses and not have to pay residuals. This stuff goes on a service like this. They can take it away like that. And you might say, "Oh, it's not going to happen." You take a look over the last week of HBO Max, and you'll watch stuff vanish.
All promises are only good for one acquisition.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, oh, the business has changed or whatever else like that. So when you're going to this model where you have access to something, you have access to it while they let you have access to it. All right. This is not strengthening your position as a customer. This is weakening your position as a customer. Number one. Number two, what is the game plan here? If you take a look at Magic, you will see what the extended game plan is. They are trying to put you in a situation where this is not a game, this is a lifestyle brand. That is like the marketing people have gotten in their ears, and they probably got a floor of them in the tower or wherever it is, explaining this to the guys. This is what we need to do. We need to put out 3 new hardcover books, but we don't want to indicate this is a new edition because that causes edition wars. So instead, what we're going to say is we kind of this is just the next evolution of D&D. It's not an edition; it's an evolution. You know, it's basically like words can mean like if you choose to, nothing means everything can mean anything. You know.
Well, apparently, evolution would suggest there's a roadmap and a space to grow into in front of this. They've said they're not fixing anything else. They're okay. And I know I'm going to get pushback on this from plenty of people out there. But mechanically speaking, I know I'm not the mechanics guy, but mechanically speaking, if you say it's going to be backwards compatible forever, or with this, you're locking off certain things that you simply can't do, which is what a new edition affords you. Like 3.5 is different from 4th ed as 4th ed is from 5th ed, and that's good. It gives a chance for D&D to wear a lot of different mechanical sort of bones here and there. But they've said they're basically done with it. Like Chris Perkins just looked like someone who was entirely sick and tired of pushing the boulder up the hill in that promo video. It's, stable and well liked is how he described the system. Yeah, okay, but it will turn very quickly into stagnant and unable to adapt if this is the path they're taking.
I wonder if they're going to what version of the Ranger will make it into the core of One D&D, because there was a frankly broken, in the less powerful than it should be Ranger in the 5th ed core. Then there was the rather nice revised Ranger, and which was promptly shelved, and then there's the fixes in Tasha's, which seemed to be decent. So I wonder what they're going to pick for the Ranger going forward.
They have pretty solid ideas about what D&D is, and they're not going to deviate from them. Like the Warlord isn't coming back, guys. There's a bunch of stuff that is basically just not happening. They have a situation which is really sweet for them, where they don't have to make many rules. They don't have to produce much mechanical content. They're here to oversee the grandeur of D&D. And the whole thing is putting you into a situation where, like Magic the Gathering, which is what you want, if you want to see what's going to happen with D&D, just look at Magic the Gathering, where they're trying to sell lifestyle brand stuff to people. They're trying to sell them special dice. They're trying to sell them, special character sheets. They're going to try to sell the stuff to you online. They're just trying to sell you more and more content, and maybe there's more and more limited edition content. Get your book with the foil cover. Get your book with everything else, like the 90s glut of comics, Get your lenticular holographic copy of, D&D 1, Like, it's even renumbered to a new edition, just like a comic book relaunch.
Okay, that specifically, lenticular covers all that bit. That specifically takes me to their first digital and physical bundle offering, which is the new Dragonlance stuff that's coming. Because check out the website, you can see it's got a countdown timer. It's 93 days until the early access starts. So pre-order now to get in. I think it's 2 weeks of early access, which is kind of weird. Like this, it's going to take you 2 weeks just to prep something out of this. It's a setting and campaign book. These kind of weird early access things are entirely taken from some other business model. I don't think they have a lot of application here. Sort of a FOMO. I don't want to miss out in those first 2 weeks of fixing this adventure and running it.
Well, do you want to be the first Twitch streamer to run this adventure?
Spare me. I know a lot of what's come to pass, I think I predicted, but the locking down on this one version D&D has sort of thrown me for a hoop. Anyways, this Shadow of the Dragon Queen book and digital bundle. There's the regular version. I'll talk about that in a second. The deluxe version, currently retailing here in Europe for €175, will get you the early access. It gets you a digital copy. It gets you the deluxe edition with the adventure book with an exclusive foil cover. So there you go. I don't want to miss out on that. You also get a mass battle game, the Warriors of Krynn, which was previewed earlier this year, which accounts for about €100 of the value of this thing, based on comparing it with just the book and digital bundle. This game, which you're going to stick 100 clams down to get hold of, has 12 scenarios. It's got, as far as I can see, it's got 6 miniatures in it.
What?
A wodge of dice tokens and cards.
What? 100 bones for 6 minis.
Basically. That's the only thing you could really take from this to use in your tabletop game.
So they're copying Games Workshop.
Look.
I know, isn't it? I read this morning. I was like, that can't be right.
Look, I have bought a bunch of crazy crap from Kickstarter. I've got board games, to stun the senses. If someone tried to hawk up 100 bones for 6 minis, they would get chased out into the street.
Now, I could be wrong about this. The plastic unit markers that they list in the same sort of bullet points, could they be like epic scale miniatures, I suppose? But still, even if they're like on the sort of scale of, what was the old Birthright board game or something like that? They were small minis, weren't they? But still, you've got 6 what will probably be sort of 28 to 32 millimeter figures, and then bag of tokens and cards. It's quite the ask.
Oh, I've got a back of the box thing here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they look like tiles.
Oh, I can see. Yeah, sorry, there's a component screen now.
They look like plastic tiles. It's a bit like, what it reminds me a bit of? Memoir. A bit like Memoir Overlord.
That's what you get. Which, honestly, ain't enough for me. €100? No thanks. There are better deals for fancy mini board games out there. Yeah, there's a spread of all the bits and pieces in the box. Nice box art. It looks like a pretty cheap to produce board game based on what I can see here. Okay, so anyways.
Yeah, this is not pretty. Look at the size of the dice. Look at the size of the plastics tiles. Look at the size of the cards.
They're rinky-dink little things.
Yeah, they're small. They're small.
Anyways, if we go back to the regular version, that'll only cost you €65. Now, you can only get the digital plus book bundle from the Dungeons & Dragons store, from D&D Beyond. And there's a thing that drove me wild here. So 65 clams. The recent Spelljammer 3-book slipcase, we reckon that's about 200 pages. That's currently up there for, I think, about the same price. You pay roughly that. This is one book. It'll come with the digital offering. But there's a note here that says, D&D Beyond Adventure Bundle and Legendary Bundle discounts are not valid for this purchase. Which is kind of interesting, because it's a book offered on D&D Beyond. And if you go over to the Legendary Bundle, it says you will also automatically receive a 15% discount off standard pricing for all future digital Dungeons & Dragons sourcebook and adventure book purchases on D&D Beyond. Now, I've had people tell me that, look, they'll say anything, it's just marketing. That's not just marketing, that's lying and then breaking your promise, which is kind of a twofer. So for some reason, this new book and digital deal isn't going to avail you the 15. And to get one of these lifetime discounts, you've got to shell out some serious money to begin with. You can't pick them up for nothing. The Legendary Bundle is $900. The other bundles are similarly eye-watering, but you get a lot of stuff for it. But you also get the promise of saving money on future purchases. And there aren't a lot of caveats in what they say. It's just a flat statement of, you will also receive a discount of standard pricing for all future digital Dungeons & Dragons sourcebook purchases on D&D Beyond! Exclamation mark.
It's a lifestyle brand. Immerse yourself in it.
That's, I think they've got some serious wriggling to do to get past promises made and rescinded.
Yeah, that's bad press waiting to happen.
Well, it's happening right now. We're recording it.
Who criticizes them?
YouTubers?
Does anyone? Do any of them?
Oh, there's certainly plenty of YouTube people covering D&D who...
Do any of the prominent voices do it, or is everyone just like, no, we got a sweet gig going here?
Depends what counts as prominent voice. Is it IGN? Is it Kotaku or Polygon who cover this stuff? Is it the bigger people in the YouTube space, either the ones who are doing sort of deals with WotC, or the ones who are sort of out, covering all sorts of other things? I don't know. It depends what you'd count as a prominent voice. Yes, this will get criticism. It is being criticized. I'm criticizing it. But I guess I'd wait to see that I'd wait to make sure you had all the walls of your walled garden built before dropping this kind of stuff. It does not bode well for the future of what they're offering their most committed customers. It really doesn't. Substandard looking board game. A wild premium price. Not to mention, and this is just more icing on this cake, they have stated, let me just get this right. So this is from the EN World newsletter, but I think they've checked their facts. So I'm gonna read this paragraph. D&D Beyond will now include digital and physical bundles for products starting with Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, as we discussed. So far, this will only include purchases on the official D&D online store, not include digital versions for those purchased in local game stores or mass market outlets. Oh, by the way, friendly local game store? Yeah, you're toast, mate. But I think we knew that already. This is considered a test phase for the project, both for customer interest and in the distribution methods. Okay, fine. When the service rolls out to previously published products, it will not include a discount for those who previously purchased the products on D&D Beyond. Welcome to buying your stuff again.
Yep.
That's pretty, as I said, you should probably make sure you've got the barbed wire in place before you start dropping these sorts of diktats into the walled garden.
I'd counter that with they may already may assume that, well, what's the competition? Are people not going to play D&D because of this?
Oh, Monopoly's got a monopoly.
Well, that's not technically a monopoly. I mean, you can get PDFs and books from other companies for other games, so it's not a monopoly.
Yes, and I think that it's not quite a monopoly versus it's a total monopoly is where things like this bleed out. I feel like they could be inflicting mortal, slow wounds on themselves by taking these kinds of moves, both in terms of hamstringing themselves in the development space they can move into, unless they're just lying, and in terms of treating their customers, their most loyal customers, in this regard, which is just going to leave a bad. No matter how much money you've spent, as long as you're even slightly rational, you're going to wonder, should you bother spending any more with these guys, given that there is, as you point out, plenty of alternatives. And then there's the last piece of the puzzle today, is the digital tabletop experience. Their version of a VTT that feature quite prominently in the trailers, etc. Not much to look at right now, but what do we think of our isometric, lush, Unreal 5 driven, tilt-shifted play space?
It looks fairly pretty. I mean, I'd want to see it in play before I say much else about it.
It'll all come down to how easy the tools are to manufacture stuff on it. And I imagine that you'll pay a premium for the layouts and stuff, or they may rely on people who are just going to produce this and then they'll sell it on the yoke and we'll take our cut of that, and that'll all be fine. Also, who's hosting it?
It's a good question. That's an excellent question, in fact, yeah.
Is it being hosted by them on their own servers, or is it a Foundry thing where you're hosting it?
No one runs their own servers. Not at this scale. The real answer is it'll be hosted on Amazon's servers and scaled up and down as needed. That's the only sane thing to do with a product like this. But yeah, I don't think you're going to be rolling your own for this. So Dave, yes, it looks pretty. For folks who haven't seen it, it basically looks like a high-end computer game. It's got the lighting, it's got the models. Now, those models are sitting on bases. They're remaining with this is a tabletop experience. My reflection on that is, like, I've played with Foundry, I've played with, Roll20. I've had a look at other versions of this sort of thing. Oh, and I know you've seen a lot more of this. But for me, I think I need a virtual tabletop. I don't need it to look like this. I need it to be smarter paper and terrain. I don't need it to be a slow computer game. And like a 3/4 isometric view is fine for certain things. I hope it's rotatable. It better be rotatable. If it's not, then we've got real problems. It's going to be incredibly fiddly in terms of... I think it's going to be real fiddly in terms of running. I know how fiddly it can be in other systems right now. I hope they do huge work on this. I hope they bring the absolute pinnacle of innovation in this space, because they're going to need to make it as fluid and innovative, or as intuitive as it has to be for people who want to play D&D kind of the way that they seem to be playing D&D, which is with a fairly sort of laissez-faire, let's just make it up as we go along attitude. I think I'll have to see. I'd like to see how does this interact with seeing my character sheet, seeing how far I can move, seeing the bonuses, seeing the line of sight. Like where's all that stuff? And will they get real lazy and start creating these digital environments and then just snapshot the top-down view for the maps that go in the book? Are they also putting the wonderful map illustrators that have made modern D&D such an interesting thing to look at? Are they putting those guys out of business as well? If the 3D modelers already did it, we'll use that stuff.
We'll have AI modelling for that. We'll just make our maps in AI.
It holds a lot of promise, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. These things are thirsty on resources and development. You can make a decent tile set construction thing. I mean, a lot of games have that. It's just down to how robust the tools are for it and how friendly to use they are. And are they going to produce this content, or are they just going to be, the nerds will make that for us, and then they'll sell it on the storefront, and we'll get our cut,
Well, so we don't have any indication of that yet. I did predict they'd move to something more Steam-like and try and sort of capture the DM's Guild aspect of the market. No announcements there. They haven't put their fingers in yet. We'll see.
Oh, they will still do the DM's Guild, but what they will do is you will be doing it in a licensed approved fashion, and they will be taking a healthy percentage of whatever content you produce, but you're going to take that deal. Like they could be looking on, maybe it's an 80-20 split. We get 80, you get 20. Maybe it's something like that. I don't like. They will do something and say you've got this is the walled garden. If you want your D&D players to have access to your content, you want to be here. They want to be premium members who have access to D&D, to extended D&D content, and then you go and you basically pay for your $5 or whatever for your module. You get $1, we get $4. Away you go.
I think it's the smart that probably reverse that. Gabe Newell is sitting on a mountain of money, not because he took the lion's share, because he made the pie so big. The premium, who has access is going to be the real canary in the coal mine on this one.
Everything through Gem Guild?
Well, maybe. I know I've been ragging hard on WotC for the guts of 40 minutes now. I know that, folks. I predicted some of this, the no more edition stuff, wild. But to their credit, I play in a lot of games where I have access to an awful lot of stuff that I haven't bought, that I haven't put cold hard cash down for, because of the permissiveness. It's kind of the old Netflix kind of idea. Share your account around, it'd be fine. If WotC decides that they really do want to milk this cow, then watching how permissive they are with access and subscriptions is going to be the real canary. And it could tell us an awful lot about, how much road this particular project has. Because if you do piecemeal access, then you can't play with your friends, because not everyone can afford to spend this, that, or the other amount of money. Owen, we've been going back and forth making comparisons to this as a game as service. We're both avid players of a game called Destiny 2, which has a lot of the same sort of issues around pricing, and we've regularly run into issues where we can't play a portion of that game with somebody because they don't have this or that expansion or season pass or you name it.
It's a really big problem in Destiny, and Destiny's on-ramping is terrible. I like Destiny, but I'm at the stage where once a year I plonk down €100 and I get all my Destiny content for the year. And I'm fine with that because I'll play 600 hours of Destiny in that year. I'm getting my value from it. I've no problem with that. I enjoy Destiny's story. I enjoy Destiny's gameplay. It's like a big MMO, but on-ramping new people into it, pain in the proverbial. I'm like, okay, let's go get you a solar rocket launcher. And then followed 20 minutes as I tried to figure out where we could get our good friend Pete's solar rocket launcher. Because I'm like, no, he can't do that content. He doesn't have that season pass. No, he can't do that. Ugh. And it was terrible. And it was basically until he bought everything, which he eventually ended up doing, we had all these really awkward mismatches. Nope, can't launch that bit of the game. Yep, can't do that bit of the game.
That sounds like a crap first experience, to be honest with you.
Oh, it really was. Like, and that's even beyond like the fact that the game doesn't explain a bunch of stuff in it.
Pete was returning to the game, I think, rather than a completely fresh player. So he had some idea of where things stood. He's also an avid role player and past organizer of Vatican for all of you local heads. So Pete's good people. Yeah, it's like I said, I think that the level of permissiveness they've allowed in their current digital offering is commendable and wise, because it has kept people playing together and kept people spending money. I know I've spent money on D&D Beyond that I wouldn't have if I wasn't so heavily engaged and impressed with how the current system works. I'm not saying that they're going to screw the pooch, but given the pricing and the rescinding of promises that we're seeing now, I would have my doubts that they're going to remain wise and permissive. Okay, we should probably wrap up. There's not a lot more meat on this bone in terms of what WotC's told us. I'm sure if you've been watching the coverage, you've got your own opinions. Any final thoughts either on the new system playtest stuff or any of the announcements they've made about where they're taking the brand, I suppose?
I hope they treat it as a genuine playtest and actually incorporate feedback as opposed to, we'll do what we like anyway. But the possibility's there.
I think this is part of monetizing D&D more efficiently, extracting more money from more consumers, and particularly development of whales who will, pay vast amounts of money for increasingly specialized content. If you look at Magic's arc, look at the way Magic is going in terms of how many cards they're producing, how they're leveraging FOMO to get people to extract more money from it. And RPG players are traditionally tricky to extract from. But they're trying to draw and they have drawn kind of a different player base who are not as wedded to the crazy DIY people that make up a lot of the old RPG player base. You're instead going people who are going to be kind of aspirational D&D players looking to, we could be famous too sort of thing. A lot of that, I would say. And a lot of high-priced products which are kind of ostensibly cosmetic upgrades. I would say you'll see a lot of that. Fancy dice towers, fancy DM screen, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the fancy. You can have fancy dice and character sheet borders and things today. They're certainly there, and for what they are, they're no more really than, say, a Steam profile pack, which can be had for pennies. So I'm not sure where they think the $8 or $9 value is coming from. We'll see. I'm not sure that the pricing or the direction for the system are in line with anything I'd be comfortable with. We will see. On your point, Dave, we'll know that there's been actual feedback taken and applied if they roll out some racial traits for Gold Dwarves, Duergar, and Shield Dwarves. In line with the other races that they've done this for. Otherwise, I think we can safely say that they're just dangling the rules in front of people to see if they'll bite or not. No real playtest required. Okay. Wow. I kind of knew going in. I knew the more I researched this was going to be a bit of a bitch fest. And if you're excited for the new D&D, more power to you. I do think that some of the moves they're making in terms of rules, I'm really interested to see what they come up with next in terms of any class redesigns or how they're going to streamline the magic system, because now there's just these 3 core pillars of magic, which I totally on board with. Nerf Fireball.
Haha, never.
But look, I think the more we see, I'm probably going to have more positive things to say about the rule set as it applies to making a 5.5. I've less positive things to say about the idea that this is the perfect D&D, need never change much at all. We might come back to the business side of it as more details are revealed. But whether you love it or hate it, join us in our Discord. Give me both barrels on some of my hot, wrong-headed stuff, and I'll fight you on the dwarf stuff. But for now, this party's over.
Thanks for listening to the adventuring party, I guess. Wait, hold on. Don't I get a say in all of this as well?
Oh.
I have opinions.
But of course, Warlord Scarr, sometimes the best time to arrive at the party is late. Guest of honor. I was on a bus.
From one horrible bloody battlefield to another horrible bloody battlefield. Well, it certainly was when I was done with it.
It's good that you're keeping carbon emissions down while travelling from site of slaughter to site of slaughter. Anyways, we've had our say. What about you?
Okay, so 5th Ed is one of those things that I've been stubbornly neutral on, like some form of grey meme person from a certain early 2000s show. I've generally, despite Eoin's best efforts, tried to take the approach that 5th Ed doesn't necessarily have to be good as long as it is doing its job as a market leader, as long as it is onboarding people into the hobby and teaching them, this is what basics of role playing, getting them interested and getting them to a point where they can make a decision. Am I happy with 5th Ed as it is? Or do I want to go here, try something different? Maybe I'm actually a board gamer. It's been fine. That's sort of the main problem with my positives and negatives of 5th Ed is that I haven't really held 5th Ed to the highest standards of game design quality like others. And so it's okay that they've added in doghead people who can fly, or changed it so all bankers are smarter than all former farmers, or whatever the background system is done. That stuff I haven't really worried. That's sort of just moving Lego bricks around in your little sculpture. It's just, adding some texture. But there is an element of this oncoming VTT first, everything going through the single point of access, the logging on to one.dnd.wizards.com or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
And how everything's going to be going through there. And does anyone like the App Store? As someone who sold my soul to Google like many a year ago, I don't really have the best of views on this, but like people bring up Apple and their walled garden a lot, and generally the impression I get is, oh, it's a great place when you're there, but you can never leave. And that's sort of the worry that this whole integrated system sort of brings to it.
That's what you got from the announcement, yeah, that they're starting to put the walls up around D&D. And
it's not even that that's the intent is to, we must block out all this creativity and render every penny of D&D to us. No, it's just in the process of creating something that is convenient for them and for the consumer, they're going to not entirely by accident, but mostly, it's not that it's an unintended consequence, this is a consequence that they see coming and no one in charge really cares about, is that they're going to stifle a lot of the D&D systems. Stuff like the DM's Guild is going to take a massive... I'm pretty sure they're going to have to basically either stop DM's Guild or tear it down and rebuild it inside the new system, right?
I've heard a lot of different takes on that one. It's not clear. They didn't make any explicit announcements about opening a kind of a Valve-style storefront or an app store, where presumably they'd take a cut of all sales, regardless whether they did any work or not. But, yeah,
I mean, they already do that with DM skill, but the problem is it's that you're going to be going to a place that they have total control over. You're not going to see ads for other games on the sidebars. You're not going to see, if you like, people who bought this product also bought Werewolf the Masquerade or
even other fantasy kind of role-playing games like 13th Age. You're not gonna see a lot of that. Okay, yeah, that's a possibility.
Like that is one of the big things that's been missing from the 5th Ed era WotC is that they have absolutely only produced 5th Ed content. They've stretched out that 5th Ed content. They've tried to apply it to a whole bunch of new fantasy settings, stuff from Magic the Gathering, brought back some old stuff, made some new stuff. That's all cool, but there's no official WotC Star Wars D20 like there was in 2002 all the way to 2010. I'm pretty sure Saga Edition lasted quite a while. There's no Star Frontiers. TSR love trying to roll out Star Frontiers or Boot Hill. Boot Hill kept coming back in tiny little ways over the years.
Wow, you have a long memory. Have they perhaps seeded that ground? They've decided that they're going to only focus on sort of heroic fantasy.
If it was that, I wouldn't be worried about it, but I get the impression that someone at, like, every so often, like Jackson, Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins are coming and say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we made, some kind of, use the 5th Ed rule set for cowboys or space opera, and someone from management is going, no, we cannot compete with ourselves for core product. And I get that impression is going to come through to the One D&D system.
Right.
That's my worry. It's not that they're going to intentionally try to strangle the RPG market. That's know that the company, even the bigwigs, do not intend to literally go into Chaosium's house and start breaking legs. It's that they would do it by accident by walling off 90%, 50%, 90%, whatever metrics you want to use. But this huge section of the RPG market is suddenly going to be isolated away from the rest of RPG fandom, not in the name of partly in the name of profit and control, but mostly in the name of convenience. And isn't that the tale of the, late stage capitalism?
Yeah, I suppose the faint hope I'd always hold is that as soon as you put a wall up, someone's going to ask themselves, I wonder what's on the other side of that. No matter how comfortable they are on their side, they'll at least, that innate human curiosity. And I would think that those who enter the role-playing hobby are perhaps even more innately curious than most. So we shall see. But you can always put barbed wire on top of the wall. That'll might hold them for a while.
Searchlights, rabbit dogs.
Yeah, a lot of sinister kind of metaphors kind of emerge from all that. But I think it's interesting that they're entering some of these marketplaces quite late. I mean, there are well-established virtual tabletops that offer a variety of different experiences. They've offered something very slick by the sort of pre-alpha footage we've seen, this isometric Unreal 5 engine, so very, very capable computer game engine with this tilt shift and clearly it's showing you models on a table. What do you think the possibilities are there? Is it the right direction?
It's basically the direction that we're expecting. We're expecting a VTT for ages. The sign's been on the wall for at least 2 years. What I've seen is basically what I expected. It's looking good. Hopefully there won't be any big development issues. It's probably going to be buggy for the first few months until there's going to be content releases and then a big patch or two. Or not, it's not really a patch. It's a deployment, I guess.
They are taking on a lot of the problems that video game developers face, which is this constant having to fix the bugs that arise when you add anything new to your system. I suppose it's just lucky that it's just as well they've fixed D&D just in time to turn their attentions to fixing virtual D&D.
If this VTT was coming with a massive set of changes to the 5th Ed framework, I might be more enthusiastic or having more existential dread. But because we know, we've basically been assured, as if we were panicking, that this will basically be 5.1 Ed, this time less racist. I'm not seeing something to get, in terms of a game, I'm not seeing anything to be particularly enthusiastic. Like, as a game, 5th Ed has always been fine. Nothing to worry about, some annoyances, just fine. And I don't see that's going to change. As I said before, I don't think it really needed to change from that. But it's the attitude around it and the idea that I would prefer D&D to act more as a market leader rather than sort of a market grower, if that's what I'm saying. It's like that the point is not to get everyone into D, is to get more people into D&D, if that makes sense.
Well, look, the popularity is yet to wane. There's more deals on the horizon. There's more classic settings coming back. We're getting, we've had Spelljammer released in the last couple of weeks. We're getting Dragonlance back in a new form. So there's plenty of old turf and new horizons for One D&D to explore. I suppose if you are happy with the sort of, as you say, it's fine system, then they can turn their attentions to content and satisfying each of the different sort of flavors and tastes for different sort of worlds and settings and types of player characters and backgrounds and things like that, and monsters, of course. Always room for more monsters.
If you want me to make my opinion out, I say this is the time. If they really are going to take any of this playtest material or stuff that they're going to take feedback from this. If you're the people who say that they need to change the crit system, or they need to change Ardlings in this way or that way or whatever, or whatever thing you have to say, this is the time to start making that very obvious. And if this is a final straw for you, I think WotC have by their own actions made it morally okay for you to say, right, I'm stepping away from D&D. Maybe you just got to play classic 5th Ed for the rest of your time. That's fine. Maybe you want to explore some other rule set or some other game now. That's fine. But if you want to be part of this One D&D system, if you want to be in this VTT virtual first, every Nolzur's Marvelous miniature comes with, 50% off the same miniature in the VTT or whatever. You want to be in that environment, this is the time for you to be saying, you want this, you want that, you want the other thing. Make yourself known and pay attention if they are making any changes because of the feedback.
Yes, they do have a survey coming up in early September, so we're not too far away from that now as we record in the waning days of August. So yeah, start playtesting, start experimenting with the new rules if you're playing D&D 5th Ed.
I want to reiterate that it's not so much that I'm negative, is that I'm seeing all the positives come with caveats, and there's just not enough to be happy about for me to express happiness in this.
Okay.
I think overall we're going to be fine, but I would say things are either going to stay the same or they're going to waver. And maybe some games will feel the pinch because of the rise of One D&D. But that's me looking at the RPG market as a whole.
Yeah. Well, the future, as always, remains uncertain. Thank you, Warlord, for coming back from the killing fields to let us know what you think of the new announcements. As I probably mentioned previously in that episode, come find us on our Discord. You'll find details in the show notes. But until then,
this party's over. And now for the real music. Thanks for listening to The Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventuringPTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike on Version 3 license.